Grin is gone, so I'm your substitute. Lucky you. Um, uh, I would like a motion to approve the agenda with one change, if we could. If we could move item number 9 up and renumber that, make that number 3 for the Scott County Comprehensive Plan presentation.
Sure, so moved.
Okay, so
Second.
we have a motion to move the agenda as amended with item number 9 becoming item number 3.
In a second.
We have a motion from Johnson, a second from Wolf. Any other changes to the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the minutes of our May 6th meeting of the Community Development Committee.
Move approval.
Councilmember Wolf moves approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Cummings seconds. Any further discussion about the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. We'll move to item number 1 under business, the Central Greenway Regional Trail Master Plan Amendment for Washington County. Tracy Kinney, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. All right.
Greg does not have a PowerPoint for 87. We have
Just
for
need a
90,
presentation.
118, and the info item.
So, all right. Yeah, we don't have a PowerPoint presentation ready for this. Greg didn't receive it.
I'm confused. No, we do have one.
Okay.
Okay.
How do we do that?
Well, Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes,
Tracy,
yes.
perhaps you can just give an overview of the item
Yeah.
and refer to the staff report that all of our members should have in front of them. And
Absolutely.
a little off the cuff, but I think we'll still get there.
No problem.
Thank you, Tracy.
Chair Veto, committee members, good afternoon. My name is Tracy Kinney. I'm the planner in Regional Parks and Natural Resources. And today before you is the Central Greenway Regional Trail Master Plan Amendment. It's upon request of Washington County. On May 2nd, MPOSC reviewed and approved unanimously this business item and had a robust conversation about it. The Central Greenway Regional Trail is located in the northwest corner of the regional park system. It's centrally located within Washington County. When it will be built out, it will be around 25 miles. It connects the Cottage Grove Ravine Regional Park to Lake Elmo Park Reserve, and then up to the north to Big Marine Park Reserve. It has 3 different segments. This south segment has a council-approved master plan as of 2017. It's both planned and existing today. The central segment, the Lake Elmo segment, is the one that you're considering. It is currently a search corridor, and it connects the south to the north. The north segment is a search corridor. It will be planned at a future date, and it connects to the State Gateway Trail and the Browns Creek Trail. The Lake Elmo segment spans about 8.5 miles. It spans from I-94 all the way to Minnesota State Highway 36. It has approximately 3.36 miles of trail that are already built, spanning from I-94 through the park, just before it exits the park. And then, just north of that, it connects up to the rest of the trail, which is around 5.25 miles, and that is undeveloped. That undeveloped portion will require kind of close to 4 acres of acquisitions in the event that trail is not developed with road improvements and will be in as part of the road right-of-way. The estimated cost to implement the master plan amendment is $12.3 million, which includes $1.4 for land acquisition, $6.8 million for development, approximately $2 million for a railroad underpass alternative, and $2 million for a pedestrian bridge. And with that, the staff finds that it is consistent with requirements of the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan and also consistent with Planning Strategy 1 planning and other council policies. And today before you is your recommendation for your consideration is that the Metropolitan Council approve the Central Greenway Regional Trail Master Plan Amendment and then require Washington County Parks to, prior to initiating development of the regional trail, send preliminary plans to to Engineering Services Assistant Manager at the Metropolitan Council's Environmental Services Division for review in order to assess the potential impacts to the regional interceptor system. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions?
Move approval?
We have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second from Wolf and Johnson. Tracy, I don't live in Washington County, but I live out that direction, and this is fabulous. This is a beautiful part of Washington County, and it'll be great asset for the county.
Chair Vento, thank you. It appears that with this amendment, they'll be able to implement this portion of the trail, which will then connect those 3 regional trail units.
Great.
Thank you.
So, seeing no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Loose Line Regional Trail Master Plan from the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. Colin Kelly. This is another one. We don't have a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay. Well, we're on our toes today. All right. Good afternoon, Chair Vento and committee members. I am Colin Kelly, Regional Parks Planning Analyst, and I'm here to present the Loose Line Regional Trail Master Plan on behalf of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. Since there are 3 interconnecting portions of the Loose Line Trail you might be familiar with, one at the state level, operated by the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and 2 at the regional level, operated by the Three Rivers Park District and Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. Some context may be helpful here. Today, if you can picture it, we are focused on the easternmost portion of the Loose Line Regional Trail, which is operated by MPRB. The Loose Line is an existing regional trail corridor that connects the Cedar Lake Regional Trail in Minneapolis through Theodore Wirth Regional Park, and then farther west to other regional parks and trails in the Three Rivers Park District system. Currently, MPRB's portion of the Loose Line Regional Trail exists entirely within other park properties or travels on local streets. A critical need for this trail has been more straightforward routing without on-street segments. Recently, a railroad abandonment has created an opportunity to establish a similar but much improved corridor for the Loose Line Regional Trail, which is proposed by this master plan. In order to create a safer, more streamlined corridor for the Loose Line Regional Trail, MPRB proposes to acquire, in collaboration with partners, all or a portion of the abandoned CP Rail or Sioux Line corridor that runs through Bassett Creek Valley. On a map I was going to show you, the existing Loose Line corridor is depicted in orange. You can see it's kind of looks like a lightning bolt. It's kind of a zigzag pattern. But the planned corridor is much more streamlined, as I mentioned. The planned corridor provides the greatest opportunity for safely connecting the regional trail without any on-road segments. Moreover, the master plan proposes to establish a dedicated land area for MPRB's Loose Line Regional Trail for the first time. With regard to the development concept, the primary feature is the trail surface itself. A new 12-foot wide multi-use trail will run from Worth Parkway to the Cedar Lake Trail, primarily in a corridor to be acquired from CP Rail and partly on industrial land that is in the process of redeveloping. Multiple development concepts were considered during the master planning process. Extensive community and partner engagement took place with the Loose Line as part of the North Service Area master planning effort. The engagement process unfolded over more than 18 months and involved a wide variety of initiatives, more than 100 direct engagement events, and personal contacts with thousands of park users and area residents. The total length of the new trail is approximately 2.32 miles and will be constructed to meet or exceed ADA standards as applied to accessible routes, trailside infrastructure, restrooms, and other regional trail amenities. The estimated cost of development is $4.155 million. But please note this figure does not include estimated acquisition costs due to pending negotiations. Council staff find that the Loose Line Regional Trail Master Plan is consistent with the requirements of the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, particularly Planning Policy Strategy 1 Master Plan requirements, as well as other council policies. The proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council, first, approve the Loose Line Regional Trail Master Plan, and second, require that the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, prior to initiating development of the regional trail, send preliminary plans to the Engineering Services Assistant Manager at the Metropolitan Council's Environmental Services Division for review in order to assess the potential impacts to the regional interceptor system. I should note that the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission unanimously approved the proposed action at its meeting on May 2nd. Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson was present for the action. Thank you.
Well, I'm very happy about this development. I have an aunt that up to maybe the last 5 years lived on Theodore Worth Parkway. And I know some friends that live along that trail as well. And it's nice to see that after all this time there's going to be this significant investment and that there was a lot of community engagement. Is that community engagement going to continue?
Chair Vento and committee member, my understanding is that yes, it will continue. There was a specific question asked at the MPOSC meeting on May 2nd about programming within Bryn Mawr Meadows and Bassett Creek parks. And Adam Arvidsson, the Director of Strategic Planning from MPRB, responded that community engagement would be continuing this year and next.
And then how are you going to get active participation in this trail? Are there ways to encourage people to take advantage of this new investment?
Yes.
Chair Vento, committee member, once again, to refer back to a response made at the MPOS meeting, Mr. Arvidsson responded that this Loose Line Regional Trail Planning effort was a part of a broader effort called the North Service Area Master Plan, which encouraged people throughout North Minneapolis to come out and engage on a variety of topics, some focused on neighborhood parks, others focused on regional plan items like regional trail plan items like this, the Loose Line. But as you may know, the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board has a number of public awareness actions, e-notifications, and otherwise that help get people out.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Anyone else have questions? Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since you don't have your PowerPoint, I guess I'll refer to Figure 4 on page 7 of the planning report. It kind of shows I think that's the one you were talking about with the orange lightning line of the old one and the red line for the new one. And I can certainly see the benefit on the first 3/4 or so of the route, but I'm curious about the last part. It looks like it goes, I'm guessing, on the north side of the impound lot. Looking from the map, and the current trail goes through a park. Why would you want to take people between an industrial area and the impound lot instead of through a park?
Chair Vento and Commissioner Wolf, it's a great question. What you might not see there on Figure 4 is that the proposed trail corridor actually will follow more closely Bassett Creek itself. Right now, the existing corridor, the existing trail does go through the north side of Bryn Mawr Meadows Park there, but in the eastern segment of the proposed corridor, there would actually be both a bicycle and pedestrian, 2 parallel tracks that would closely align with the creek. So, and to answer the second part of your question, that area is in the process of redeveloping, and my understanding is the hope is that it won't remain a heavily industrial area for perpetuity.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you talk specifically a little bit about, I know we're trying to be creative in our outreach and in reaching those who don't actually use the trail or haven't up until now. So, and I know we heard when we were at the Coon Rapids Regional Park, we heard some really creative ideas and thoughts about what they're doing to engage communities that have not been at the table before other than just doing this. Looks like you've done lots of community outreach, but can you talk specifically about some of the maybe new and different ways that we're doing outreach?
Chair Vento, Commissioner Cummings, I can say a little bit about that. Again, Adam Arvidsson from Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board could say more. But what I know from reviewing the master plan is that they took on a fairly innovative process, in my opinion, that used some grant funding to encourage different organizations and individuals to engage with people over that 18-month process. So anywhere from established groups to folks who had good ideas about how to get people together and gather input was considered and taken on. And it's one of the first times I've seen something like that occur. And from what I've heard from others, the process has been seen as successful in bringing people to the table and gathering input over that time frame.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one more question. In the report, it says that Chair Yaruso asked about the funding of the existing trail, who paid for that trail. Did the answer to that ever, it says that staff would look into it, but did you get an answer to that? Because if we paid for the first trail, I don't want to pay for a second one. You know what I mean?
It's an excellent question. I haven't heard the response to that. I think Adam was going to speak with MPRB staff on that one, but I could certainly get back to you on that if need be.
Madam Chair, I would like to have the answer before this goes to the full council. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
And with that motion, we've got the getting the information about the previous funding. Okay. Any discussion about the motion and second? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Colin. Next, we have Angela Torres with a presentation of the Scott County 2040 Comprehensive Plan.
In case you're wondering.
He's gone to the Anoka and Dakota County PowerPoint.
That's not my PowerPoint. I'm coming.
You want to kind of begin, Angela? And
Yeah, we've got it on our.
Yeah, we've got it on our iPads, so.
Okay. Hello, I'm Angela Torres, Manager of Planning Assistance in the Community Development Division. I did want to give a brief refresh of some key points of County Planning Authority. There it is. Before I start. My refresher slides get shorter and shorter as we have more of these in front of us. I just wanted to briefly again mention the different planning authority that counties may have. It's different than Dakota and Washington for Scott County as well, that the committee has previously acted on. You might notice that the Scott County plan didn't go in front of the Environment Committee, which is appropriate. The county is not responsible for planning for wastewater services. That lies with the local jurisdictions within the county. But land use authority does vary for counties, and Scott County does have planning authority over the majority of the townships within the county's jurisdiction, or within the county's boundaries. A recent development, Credit River Township has asked for their planning authority to be returned to them, and state statute does allow for that. Um, what the what happens is that townships can cede their planning authority to the township, ask the county, to take that planning authority over on their behalf, and the counties are obligated to do that if that request is made. So for 10 of the townships within Scott County, the county has planning authority for those. Counties are also responsible for transportation planning, and Scott County is also one of the 10 implementing agencies that we work with our regional park system. And the county's plans still have to be consistent with other council policies as well. So on kind of that just basis, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise, I can move on to the Scott County plan. Okay. I would like to recognize that Scott County staff Brad Davis is here in the audience today. Brad is the county's planning manager and has led the development of the 2040 plan. I'd like to personally thank Brad and all of the other county staff for the hard work and collaboration over the last 2 or 3 years as they've been working to develop the county's plan. Brad and the county have both been great partners, and it's truly been a pleasure to work with him. I look forward to continuing that work as the county works to implement their 2040 plan. This map shows the regional systems for the county. This includes 7 regional parks, park reserves, or special recreation features like Murphy-Hanrahan Regional Park and Cedar Lake Farm Regional Park. The county has 8 regional trails or trail search corridors like Spring Lake Regional Trail. The county has 18 state or federal lands that include wildlife management areas, wildlife refuges, state recreation areas, state trails, and scientific and natural areas like the Savage Fen Scientific and Natural Area. Regional systems also include principal arterials like I-35 and Highway 169, and there are also many wastewater treatment system facilities in the county, mostly located within the county's municipalities. Blue Lake, for example, is in the city of Shakopee. Thrive MSP 2040 has designated the communities in the county as 7 different community designations. The county has all but 2 of the most urbanized community designations and represents all types of suburban and rural community designations. The trio of the northernmost cities are designated as suburban, suburban edge, and emerging suburban edge. 3 standalone cities are designated as rural centers. The remainder of the county is agricultural, rural residential, or diversified rural. And the city of New Prague is outside of the council's planning authority, and you'll see that area in white. During the development of the plan, the county initiated discussion with council staff regarding a change in community designation for 178.5 acre property from diversified rural to rural residential. The rural residential development pattern does include 2.5 acre unsewered residential lots, and Thrive does specifically discourage the expansion of rural residential development patterns. This area is located in the northeast portion of Newmarket Township. County staff and council staff discussed this early on in the plan development process and agreed that this small area is unlikely to be served with urban services due to specific system constraints for this small area. Those include topography, soils, and wetlands. Council staff find that the county's request to change the community designation for this small area to be reasonable. Between 2020 and 2040, the council forecasts that Scott County will grow by almost 46,000 in population. That represents nearly 20,000 households, and see an increase of 13,540 jobs. The county is responsible for planning for the townships in the county, with the exception of Credit River Township, as I mentioned. This is a recent change, and the transition is still in process. Scott County plans for all of the other 10 townships. These areas are largely agricultural in the southwest, transition in the center of the county, rural residential growth in Spring Lake Township and Newmarket Township, rural residential reserve in Cedar Lake Township and Newmarket Township, and around each rural center and around the developing cities in the north part of the county, the plan identifies urban expansion areas. The urban expansion areas reflect each city's long-term sewer service plans. based on known capacities and existing regional or local treatment facilities for those rural centers. These areas are held at densities low enough to accommodate potential future extension of regional services. So with review of the plan, the Scott County plan conforms to system plans, is consistent with council policies, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent communities and affected jurisdictions. The proposed action is in the staff report. The committee is asked to consider the following actions for the Metropolitan Council. Authorize Scott County to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, amend the community designations map in Thrive MSP 2040 to extend the rural residential community designation to a small area in Newmarket Township, and advise the county to implement the advisory comments in the review record for transportation, forecasts, land use, and water supply. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions?
Um,
Try.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Lee, I'm sorry.
That's fine. Thank you. When a township takes back their planning powers, do we do an exit interview, or do we kind of evaluate how and why that relationship came to be in that place?
Chair Vento and Councilmember Lee, the council isn't involved in those relationships. That is a request between the township and the county, and they facilitate that between themselves. That's according to state statute. What I understand is that Credit River Township is ready to do some growth planning, and they wanted to do that on their own, and the county was amenable to ceding back that planning authority to the township, which is appropriate because that comes as a request. So, but that's a relationship between the county and the township.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wolf?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is in my district, and I would just comment that Credit River Township is bigger than many of the cities in Minnesota.
Yeah.
It's about the same population as Jordan. So it's unusual that it would remain a township that long without switching to being a city.
Councilmember Chalice?
Okay, so it's still a small area that's impacted, even though the city is large. If I'm understanding you correctly, the reason that the non-conforming to the urban designation is because the area is small, and also because of the soil and some of those other factors is why there's a different designation allowed. But I really appreciate you providing that kind of detailed information, but can you clarify, am I understanding that right, that even though it is a large city, the impacted area is small for those reasons?
Chair Vento and Councilmember, there are two different situations, I think. Credit River Township is not related to the area where the community designation is proposed to change. Is that what you are referring to?
Yes.
The community designation changes in Newmarket Township,
Okay.
in the northeastern portion of Newmarket Township, and it's a small area that we believe will be difficult to provide regional sewer service to, and some of the conditions of that property include difficult soils, topography, there are wetlands there, and given that it is such a small area in the context of the larger county, council staff felt like it was an appropriate request from the county to redesignate that area to rural residential.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Johnson?
This is one of my new council member questions. So at the beginning, you had mentioned how counties have different roles and responsibilities in comp planning. I would assume it's all set forth in state statute, or is that somehow negotiated, or is it just based on the systems within the county? I'm learning.
Councilmember Vento and Councilmember, it's set in state statute. That relationship is, I couldn't list the number of the state statute off the top of my head, but it's outlined very clearly in the Metropolitan Land Planning Act, the relationship between townships and counties and that planning authority.
And Madam Chair,
Yes.
And just more broadly to counties, so does county authority from county to county, could that differ depending on the overall comp planning authority they have?
Chair Vento and Councilmember Johnson, yes, that's very true. Scott County and Carver County both have some planning authority over the townships. Carver County has planning authority over all of the townships because those townships have requested that the county act on their behalf in this planning process. Scott County has that same planning authority over all of the other 10 townships within the county.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the plan?
Move approval.
Wolf moves. Who would like to second?
Second.
Johnson seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Angela. And is Brad, could you, oh, congratulations. Yes, and thank you for being here.
Thank
A
you.
lot of work, and we appreciate it. Item number 5, Regional Parks Capital Grant Agreement Authorizations. Samuel Johnson.
Excuse me.
Oh,
We're going to do 20.
Number 4. Sorry. I have my agenda clearly marked. So it's item number 4 with Deb Jensen.
Deb Jensen?
Yes. She's going to do the future reimbursement considerations for Anoka and Dakota counties. Sorry, Samuel, I messed that up.
Greetings, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Deb Streets Jensen, and I am the Senior Finance Planner in the Regional Parks and Natural Resources Unit. Because I am retiring 6 weeks from today, I will be presenting a couple of minutes of background on this item, and then I will turn it over to my new colleague, Abdiwahad Ali, who has helped to do the analysis for this proposal.
Cool.
You grab that. Thank you. So what is future reimbursement consideration? State and regional dollars fund a significant portion of the capital budget for the 10 regional parks implementing agencies. Because state funding is cyclical, and because those cycles take more than a year to complete, sometimes agencies need to move forward with a project before state and regional money is available. Future reimbursement consideration is a funding mechanism that provides a process for agencies to undertake a project that has not yet been funded with state and regional money, pay for the project with local funds, but have the potential to recoup those funds through a later reimbursement from the council. This project requires approval from the council to begin. That is the approval that Anoka County and Dakota County are seeking with these requests. And I know this is busy. This diagram shows the difference between the normal process versus the process for future reimbursement consideration. And you don't really need to read this. What you need to look at is the relative length between the two of them. The normal process is in dark blue on the top, and the future reimbursement process is down on the bottom in light blue. In the normal process, agencies generally submit their bonding proposals in odd-numbered years. When the legislature convenes the following year, it may or may not pass a bonding bill. Projects waiting for bonding money must wait at least 14 months before they are funded, and perhaps much longer if the legislature doesn't appropriate money. Still, this process works most of the time because agencies are aware of this funding cycle and they plan for it accordingly. Sometimes, however, the agencies have projects that must be undertaken much sooner than the normal process allows. Sometimes this is because they have an option to capture some savings if they partner with a local agency. We had one recently where they were working on a trail at the same time that the county was working on the road that was right next to it. So they put those two projects together and saved the county and the state and the region money. So sometimes they have to, they have to undertake them much sooner than the normal process allows. Council's approval to consider reimbursing the agencies at a future bonding round for work done now helps the agencies undertake projects that are urgent or to leverage funding collaborations with other government bodies. The agencies can begin this process by asking the council for its approval, as they are doing today. Approval does not create a liability for the council, and it does not constitute a promise to pay the agency. Council's approval means that at some undesignated point in the future, the requesting agency may ask for reimbursement for an approved project from that agency's share for regular bonding cycle. There's a twist, though. State bond funds cannot be used for reimbursements like these. So you might remember from my last presentation that the council matches every $3 in state bonding money with $2 of regional money. These reimbursements need to come out of the council's bonds for any portion of the bonding appropriation. Therefore, when we get normal requests for bonding projects, one of the first things we look at is the amount of future reimbursement requests in that entire suite of projects. We had 21 projects presented 2 years ago. Of those, I believe there were 5 of them that requested reimbursement, mostly for previous acquisitions, like we saw from the St. Paul item that we brought through 2 weeks ago. When we look at the first set of projects, the first thing we do is look at the total amount of reimbursements. If that amount is less than the council's share of that bonding appropriation, then we can go ahead and include it in the request that goes to the legislature. If it exceeds the portion that we fund, we go back to the agencies and ask them to recalculate, or some of them may need to wait for a future appropriation. You can see from the flow chart that following the regular process gets the funding to the agencies more quickly, but the future reimbursement helps them get the work done more quickly. This doesn't happen frequently. Our records show that we only have about 25 of these from 2000 forward, which is about when the council began doing this kind of work. Agencies much more frequently request future reimbursement consideration when they request council grants to assist them in acquiring property, as we saw last time in the St. Paul request for the Robert Pyre Regional Trail. This happens a lot more frequently. We have about 80 of those requests over time. After the council approves the future reimbursement as a part of the acquisition grant request, the process for future reimbursement is the same as for development projects. The agencies look at what they need from the next bonding appropriation, and they portion it out accordingly. In both cases, requesting reimbursement in a bonding appropriation does not affect the agency's overall share. It is a formula, and they will get their share of whatever the appropriation is, regardless of whether it includes reimbursement. This is just another line item in their set of projects that they request. With that, I'd like to hand this over to Abdi Wahad to explain more.
Can everybody hear me? And my voice tends to trail off, so let me know if you can't, okay? Again, my name's Abdi Wahab. Oh, this one here? Okay. So on to Anoka County's request. So the county is partnering with the city of Coon Rapids to fill a 2,000 linear foot gap along Coon Rapids Boulevard. The council approved a similar request in 2017 for another part of the Coon Creek Regional Trail, and the proposed project will be completed during 2019. And the request is for $50,000 in future reimbursements. Dakota County has asked for 5 future reimbursements. So in their request, they have 5 projects. The first one is the Mississippi River Regional Trail, which runs approximately 72 miles along the river through the metro. Development of the Mississippi River Regional Trail in Rosemount closes a gap in the planned trail to provide a full 25-mile connection between South St. Paul and Hastings. Completion of the trail in Dakota County will not only provide a signature recreational experience and alternative transportation option for residents, but will also play a key role in advancing the creation of a regional and national scale destination trail. The trail Rosemount East segment is approximately 1.8 miles with the potential for multiple grade separated road crossings. The project is currently undergoing design and engineering based upon previously approved capital improvement process or plans. The second of the 5 projects um, is, well, this project includes design, engineering, and construction of a trailhead along the Minnesota River Regional Greenway at the Highway 77 Cedar Avenue Bridge. The trailhead will provide trail support services at a critical juncture of existing planned trails that connect multiple Twin Cities suburbs to Minneapolis and St. Paul, with a key connection across the Minnesota River to the Long Meadow Lake Unit of the Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge, and over the newly renovated Old Cedar Trail Bridge. Today, the site includes limited trail access but lacks accessible connections, wayfinding information, trail parking, and standard support amenities such as restrooms, trash receptacles, and lighting. The new trailhead will provide these amenities as well as picnic areas, river fishing access, river viewing spots, interpretation, and native vegetation. The third of the 5 projects, well, this one, uh, the city of Burnsville received a 1.6 million federal transportation grant, and the county is providing a local cost share for construction and project delivery. County funds are subject to a joint powers agreement with the city. The project is currently undergoing a feasibility study with results expected in late 2018. Final design is planned to be completed in 2019. This request reflects the best preliminary estimate available at this time. A revised request may be submitted in the future for board consideration. Just 2 more to go. Fourth future reimbursement request project is the city of West St. Paul received 2014 state bonding funds for the construction of a grade separated crossing of the River to River Regional Trail at Robert Street. The city and county are collaborating to explore the feasibility of alignments to safety for regional trail users. This project is conditional upon the city proceeding with the crossing, the successful acquisition of land control for the preferred alignment, and the county board approval of a joint powers agreement with the city regarding roles, including final cost share. Separately, the county has requested a park acquisition opportunity fund grant for a parcel immediately to the west of the Great Separated Crossing, and that request will be presented to the council in July. And apologies here. Okay, the final project, sorry here. Final project of the 5 future reimbursements is the project scope is based upon the Lake Billsby Master Plan approved by the council in 2018 and includes campground improvements, access to the Cannon River, beach, water play enhancements, picnic area improvements, development of the Echo Point use area, and access to the west unit of the park. The park-wide natural resource improvements will be also completed. And apologies, I did not name the 5 projects, but they are listed here. The proposed action that the Met Council will be taking is to consider reimbursing Anoka County first in terms for up to $50,000 from its share of a future regional parks bonding program for costs it incurs to build a segment of the Coon Creek Regional Trail. And the second proposed action item is to consider reimbursing Dakota County up to $7,407,134 from its share of a future regional parks bonding program for costs it incurs to design and construct the following 5 projects.
Any questions?
One more slide.
Sorry.
No worries. Sorry, I took long there. Recommended action is continued is to inform Anoka and Dakota counties that the council does not, under any circumstances, represent or guarantee that it will reimburse the counties, and that expenditure of local funds never entitles a park agency to reimbursement.
Questions? Councilmember Chambliss and then Councilmember Johnson after.
Okay, thank you, and thank you. The Metropolitan Parks Commission approved the Coon Creek Regional Trail, but I see that it says to cover any portion of the cost of developing the recreation open space. Um, can you explain the reason why that is so broad?
Madam Chair, committee member, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Okay, so for the Coon Creek Regional Trail, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Um, the grant from any funds available from the Open Space Commission is to cover any portion of the cost of developing regional recreation. I was looking for the detailed rationale in here for the plan. Am I missing something?
Madam Chair, committee member, are you asking why they are requesting future reimbursement, or are you asking for detail about the project?
Detail about the project.
Madam Chair, committee member, we don't have that full detail yet because these are still in feasibility studies. They do comport with the master plans for each one of the parks and trails that are mentioned. So our planning staff has reviewed that and confirmed that they are within the master plans.
At this stage. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, this program was put together in 2000 or the early 2000s.
Madam Chair, Councilmember, yes, ma'am.
And Madam Chair, and the idea was to help agencies better with cost savings, efficiencies, and timeliness of projects, while they may not have yet secured other funding. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, committee member, yes, and in fact, we had some instances where there was a critical failure, for example, of a water line. They needed to get in and do that. They didn't have it in their approved capital program. This was an Anoka County request, so they came in for approval to begin repair of that so that they could reopen that portion of the park with additional water.
Madam Chair, just two more quick questions. And by agencies, is that a local unit of government or can that be other types of applicants?
Madam Chair, committee member, as with all of our regional parks grants, they can only go to the 10 regional parks implementing agencies.
And lastly, have we ever not reimbursed?
Madam Chair, committee member, not to my knowledge. We have a fairly large list that is approximately $50 to $60 million. I could not foresee how long it would take to pay that out. Decades, certainly.
Thank you.
Committee Member Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we have matching funds from the state and that might expedite the process or how we dole out funds, would that also be true for federal funds?
Madam Chair, committee member, no, it would not, because none of our grants are partnered through our documentation with a federal grant. If an agency has a federal grant, they may request a grant from the council as a match. But that would be a normal process. It wouldn't be a future reimbursement.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We have a motion to approve.
So move.
Second?
We have a motion and a second by Committee Member Lee, a second by Committee Member Cummings.
Wolf wasn't me.
Oh, Wolf, sorry. I was hearing voices. Any other discussion? Okay, there's no other discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Deb, how many years?
23, ma'am.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And congratulations to you, Abdi.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you, committee members.
Our next item is Mr. Johnson. Samuel, now you get to come up, and I won't mess this up. You're going to talk about the Regional Parks Capital Grant Agreement Authorization.
Madam Chair, you are correct, and quite frankly, this should be fairly short, so it's just going to be up and down once again. My name is Sam Johnson. I'm a grants administrator here at the Met Council, and I'm coming here to talk with you about business item 2019-113, which is a request that the council authorize regional administrator or their designee to execute 21 grant agreements totaling $16 and 2/3 million for the regional park implementing agencies as indicated in accordance with attachment 1 of the business item. So this request is a standard procedure that the council performs in order to allow the regional administrator or their designee to enter into contracts and do procurements with other governmental entities for anything over $500,000. But I wanted to go through it fairly point by point just to make sure that you understand why this is in place and what this does with your authorization. So to give you a background on the $500,000 limits, it is a longstanding council policy intended to ensure that the Metropolitan Council expends funds in a way that is consistent with the public purpose doctrine, various governing laws, rules, and regulations given to us by the state. And to give you a background on the projects that this would be authorizing, the Community Development Division passes through state and regional funds to our 10 regional park implementing agencies, as Deb had mentioned before, and for the various projects. And these project funds are managed through grant agreements. And for these 21 grants listed in the business item, 10 of them are indeed over $500,000, which necessitates this authorization. The 21 projects, just to give you a little bit of background on them, they were evaluated by council staff, approved by MPOSC, and then the council itself on September 27th of 2017. Staff presented the list of recommended projects to the Minnesota Management and Budget Office in October of 2017. And then they were included in the Regional Park System Capital Improvement Program, which went into the governor's proposed budget for 2018. In 2018, the state appropriated $10 million in answer to this submittal. They were in $10 million was made up of environmental and natural resource trust funds. And then this year, they replaced that funding source with more conventional state bond funds for these projects. The council, of course, matched every $3 they received in that $10 million with $2 of council bonds. And now we're looking at 16 and 2/3 million for these 21 projects. Lastly, if you recall, the council authorized capital program. The council's authorized capital program 2019. It was the budget amendment was approved by you all just this past April 24th. So just to put that all together, these projects have been reviewed by the council. The funds have been appropriated by the state, and this is simply an authorization that you're giving for the projects that are over $500,000. And so in light of those facts, I hope that you approve the action, which is that the Metropolitan Council authorize our regional administrator or their designee to execute these 21 grant agreements in total of $16 and 2/3 million. Thank you so much.
Questions?
Yeah.
Committee Member Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, what happens to grants that are less, in contracts that are less than 500,000?
So with contracts that are less than $500,000, we can execute those at our discretion. It's simply for the ones that are over that limit that we need to basically double check with you to make sure they're okay.
Thank you.
Committee Member Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to that point, so you have to then work with units of government or park agencies to make sure that if there's two requests under 500,000, does that ever happen where they try to maybe split something because maybe they're closely timed, but they're still part of a greater project? Does that ever happen, or do we try to combine requests? Just curious, because that number, you can come very close to it and you can go over it.
Absolutely. Madam Chair, Councilperson, I'm not aware that they intend to ever do that, but because we group these grants all together in association with the funding that we receive from the state, it really wouldn't make a difference because you're giving authorization for all of the grant projects and not necessarily if they are split up in such a case.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I may add to that. It's really delegating signature authority to staff to execute these. It's not a re-review of the projects because the council has already reviewed and approved those, but really saying that staff were our signature authority for our regional administrator and community development division director end at 500,000. Anything above that, we need to seek her approval in order to execute these. In a typical procurement process, you would see these individually, but because this comes through state bonding, and it comes in a big package and you've already approved these projects, we ask for your approval as a single action.
Committee Member Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just comment that normally the agencies would have had this money last year, but because of the conflict over whether it was legal to use Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund bonds, MMD decided not to do anything until that all got worked out and the legislature did it a different way so that they could actually get the money. So this is really routine that we'll see all the time being council members, except for that it's weird that it's late because of the fight over the source of the bond money.
Do we have a motion and a second to approve?
Move approval.
Wolf moves.
Second.
Chambliss seconds. Any discussion? Being there's no discussion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much, Samuel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your time.
Okay, we have item number 6, the City of Minneapolis request for a project, for a project change to the tax base revitalization account grant, Midtown Corner Senior Housing with Marcus Martin. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So originally we had intended to have 2 project change amendments before you, but at the last minute we got a number of revisions to one of those, so we'll do that one at a future time. So today we'll focus on the one that has already been mentioned, the Midtown Corner. For this project, we awarded a grant back in early 2018, January 2018. $85,600, and that was for soil contamination cleanup under what's now a vacant lot near the old grocery there, just north of Lake Street and 26th. At that time, that project was proposed to be a senior housing development. After repeated attempts to find construction financing for that site, the developer has requested a change through the city and to us to make that into workforce housing. So they are proposing to going from 90 units of affordable senior housing into a larger project. In your staff report, it says 191. I actually received an update that says that's too many. It's 189 units of housing. And of those, a portion of those will be affordable for a period of 10 years. Now, that's shorter than the term that we consider a unit affordable for grant evaluation purposes, but I did want to make you aware of that. That would be 38 units instead of the 40 written in your staff report are intended to be affordable at the 51 to 60% range of area median income. So that's a quick background on that project. I want to explain that the reason it is coming before you is that when developers and applicants make changes to their projects that we consider significant, and we only measure a couple different things. We only look at the changes in affordable units, or a change of over 20% in the tax base, or a change of over 20% in the job count. Those are instances where we would bring that before you. So in this case, we had a change in the affordable units, of course, and in the job count as well. So that's why it's coming back to you for approval.
Any questions? Member Lee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Why does this site not require a new cleanup plan? Because it's one of the bullet points.
So in this case, because they're using, Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the question. In this case, because they're using the same footprint of the building site, it didn't require a change in that. Right now, it's undeveloped. They're going to dig to a similar level, so they expect to find similar amount of contamination. It's more a question of the height instead of the depth.
Thank you.
Committee Member Chambliss.
Yes, I'm just curious about the lack of funding for the senior housing. Not that I had an issue with uh, the senior housing, but I'm definitely in favor of the workforce housing and the affordable housing. Do you know why there was an issue with getting the financing? Does it have to do with saturation, or what was the reasoning? Do you have an idea about that?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, no, I don't, but we are lucky enough to have a representative of the developer here today that could speak to that if that's of interest to the chair.
Sure, that'd be great. Welcome. If you could state your name for us, that would be great.
Thank you, committee members. My name is Casey Jevachensky. I'm a project manager at Wellington Management. So to answer your question, when Wellington first bought this site in 2016, it was in a qualified census tract, which effectively for low-income housing tax credit purposes, you get more equity for sites in those geographies. But after we purchased the site, while we were applying for those tax credits and other public subsidies, that site dropped out of that qualified census tract area. So we lost the equity that we would have gotten on the project, and it was about worth about $1.5 million. So we kept going and trying to find alternative financing methods, but the gap was just too big to do a traditional low-income tax credit structure. So we're able to use some different financing structures to shift from that 90 units of senior housing to 189 of workforce housing.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee Member Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for answering questions. So this is just the cleanup, which is great. We'll get that done. And then as far as, and I'm going a little bit afield of the item, but just for your other funding, have you got all of that in place?
So we just received word last week that we got about $200,000 from Dakota County through their TOD program to do other site improvements, and then we have term sheets from 2 different lenders, and then we're using part of it. The equity is from internal sources, and then the rest of the equity will come from Opportunity Zone Investor, who we're working through the deal terms right now. So we expect to be able to close on all the financing in July and start construction, hopefully, or clean up late July, maybe August.
Okay.
But for sure, starting late summer, early fall.
And Madam Chair, so other than this cleanup, nothing coming from Met Council or HRA or anything like that?
Nope.
Okay.
Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So reducing the commercial space by about half, is that to accommodate the additional units? Or?
Yes, exactly. So what we needed to do, and the whole reason why we're asking for the cleanup funding is because there's contaminated groundwater on the site about, I think 13 feet down. So we can only do one level of underground parking. So to be able to get the financing and the numbers to work, we need to add the density. But because we can only do one level of underground parking, there will be a little bit of interior structured parking that will be shielded from the street. So that's effectively taken away from the retail, but we'll concentrate all the retail on the Minnehaha Avenue side. And then we're designing that first level of the podium where that temp parking is. So it could be converted to future retail or other amenity spaces down the road as people drive less and need to park fewer cars. So we're trying to create a flexible design in the building.
Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being patient with me. And so the 10-year on the income restricted, any magic to that and any interest in extending it beyond 10?
Yep. So we're certainly open to extending it. It's already a fairly marginal deal and wouldn't work without that opportunity zone investment. The reason it's 10 years is because we're trying to layer in the 4D property tax program through the city of Minneapolis. So that requires a 10-year commitment. So we're hopeful that we could stretch it out longer than that. But again, to get our opportunity zone investment to show up, we need to have at least some flexibility, because without that, we wouldn't have the project.
And Madam Chair, and so at what point in time would you look at extending it beyond the 10-year?
I think it would probably be, before the 10 years, obviously, but, year 8, year 9, I don't have an exact time frame. And it, we just don't know. But I would say even with the market rate units that we have, 100% of the units are going to be under that 80% AMI level, given where the rents are in that market today. So I think our team looks at this as a 100% workforce project with rents between 60% and 80% AMI.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there a motion to, any further discussion or any further questions? Is there a motion to approve?
So move. Second.
Cummings and Wolf move in second. No discussion? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Thank you both.
Thank you.
It's very helpful.
Great job.
Thanks. We next have Terry Smith on the Metro HRA Moving to Work Demonstration Program.
Excuse me, we're doing the bridges first.
We're doing the bridges first. Thank God there's somebody here to keep me straight. So we're doing the bridges first. Okay.
Good afternoon,
Looking at
Madam
the
Chair,
wrong
members of the
agenda.
committee. As I pick up my papers off the floor back there, I will join you. My name is Terry Smith. I'm the Director of the Council's Housing and Redevelopment Authority. I do not have PowerPoints tonight, but have two items for you. And the first one is requesting that the council adopt a board resolution for the Bridges Rental Assistance Program. The council's HRA has administered the Bridges program since 1993. This is a state program that provides rent assistance to persons with serious and persistent mental illness. The program works in cooperation with the county case management system, wherein the county provides case management services to ensure successful independent living for the program participants, and then the housing authority provides the rent subsidy. So this board resolution is just required by Minnesota Housing. The program is funded with Housing Trust Fund dollars, and they require the board resolution to accept the additional grant term funding, which is just over $3 million. And that will provide rent assistance, continued rent assistance, I should say, for the 180 families that are currently on that program over the next 2 years. So my request for you today is that you adopt the board resolution that's indicated, or that's attached to the business item. And I'm happy to answer questions.
So is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the Director of the Metropolitan Council Housing and Redevelopment Authority to execute a grant agreement with Minnesota Housing for the Bridges Rental Assistance Program?
Move approval.
Wolf moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Lee seconds. Any discussion? Great. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Terry. And we'll go on to the next item, the Metro HRA Moving to Work Program.
So yes, again, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. The second item I have before you is requesting, again, a board resolution, and this one is for authorizing the council to adopt the resolution for the Housing Authority to submit a letter of interest for the Moving to Work demonstration program to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And so you will recall 2 weeks ago I was before you for an information item explaining what the Moving to Work program is. Essentially, that is a federal program designation that is awarded to housing authorities across the country to provide flexibilities in how federal rent assistance is administered, with the goals of providing more efficient service to families, being more efficient with administrative processes, and providing additional housing choice with families while promoting self-sufficiency. And so the board resolution before you is today that you approve the submittal of a letter of interest to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the Moving to Work demonstration expansion under the rent reform cohort. I should note that submitting the letter of interest does not commit the council to anything at this point. So if we are selected to move forward with the application process, we will be back before you for further engagement in terms of providing the additional details that we learned through the process.
So, are there any questions? Committee Member Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know in here it notes too that things move slowly. So what would be kind of the time frame if we were accepted into the program? How would that work?
So Madam Chair and Councilmember Cummings, we're not exactly sure of the timing. The notice that was issued didn't indicate timing. So HUD has 7 years to award all the expansion cohorts, which I think I indicated last time there will be 100 new agencies with the new designation. HUD has 7 years to award all of those, which brings them to 2023. However, this is the second to 4 cohorts. So I expect we would hear at least initially within the next month or two, but that's a guess.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion to approve.
Chambliss moves. Second? Wolf seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Terry. Next, we have Libby Starling and Emmett Mullen presenting scenarios for just as they're coming up, they're going to present scenarios for the Regional Parks Equity Grant Program pilot. Just so that they're sitting down, Lisa, so the previous items that we approved under the business, all but the City of Minneapolis request for a project change to the tax base revitalization account grant for the Midtown Corner Senior Housing, all except that one will go to the full council, correct?
That is correct.
And
Madam
then
Chair.
that motion we passed regarding Midtown is done and ready to go.
That is correct, Madam
Okay.
Chair. That action stops here, and you'll also note that the items listed with an SW next to them are same week items and will be at the council on Wednesday, and the remainder of those items will go at the following council meeting.
So SW is same week, not Southwest. Got it.
Excuse me, Chair. May we designate right now which items will go consent or non-consent? That'll be okay.
Sure.
Madam Chair, if you wish.
Your recommendations on how to handle that?
Madam Chair, typically comprehensive plans are non-consent.
Okay.
And then other items, kind of high level, if we're awarding dollars, or have any controversial or items for discussion would be non-consent, but otherwise items that seem routine would be on consent. So for example, grant agreement authorization item 2019-113 is relatively routine, something we do regularly.
Okay.
So with that, it's still at the discretion of the chair and the committee.
And do we identify that here tonight? Okay, committee, your thoughts. The Scott County, of course, is going to be non-consent for sure.
Normally, aren't same week ones
Same week.
also not on consent because it's such a short turnaround that people might not have been paying attention to what was going on?
Okay, so the
The rest of the
SWs
council?
will be
correct.
non-consent,
Thank you.
okay? And then the remainder consent?
Sure.
Do we need a formal motion on that? Okay, we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. I wasn't prepared for that one. So, scenarios. Libby and Emmett, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council members, my name is Libby Starling. I am your Deputy Director of the Community Development Division. With me is Emmett Parks, the Regional Parks Manager. And we are returning to you.
Emmett Mullen.
What did I say?
Parks.
I am Emmett Parks.
Councilmember Wolf, thank you for listening. And with that evidence that you're paying attention to all of this, perhaps more than I am, we are coming back to you to talk about the Regional Park System Competitive Equity Grant Pilot Program. And I want to start with where we are and where we're going to give you some sense of what we're looking for today. So as a reminder, on May 6th, we were before this committee and we talked about the history, we talked about the goals, we talked about the process of the competitive equity grant program pilot. And at that point, we gave you a teaser of the various scenarios that we've been talking about. So today we are coming back to you, hoping to get additional clarity and thoughts and insights about the various scenarios. And again, this is not intended to be a multiple choice exercise, but to go through each of the scenarios to hear from you what you like about each of them, what concerns you, what bothers you, in order that we can take all of this information, take it back, and then use the rest of May to refine it into a fund distribution plan, as well as some additional engagement pieces. So we will be talking about these scenarios with our regional park implementing agency partners on Thursday. So then on June 6th, we will take all of these thoughts and take it down into a singular proposed fund distribution plan that the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission, MPOSC, will be reviewing at their June 6th meeting, and that will come to you on June 17th. So we're trying to get your final sense of ideas, take the temperature of which pieces interest you, so that we can come back to you in June with a fully fleshed out proposal on the competitive equity grant program. So with that, assuming that we stay on that overall timeline, we'll then be in a position to put out the announcement and start asking for applications over the summer months with the intent that we'd be reviewing, making selections on grantees in late 2019, getting the money out so that our implementing agencies can begin implementation of their grants in 2020, and then beginning the ongoing cycle of evaluation and beyond. So that's the scope and game plan for today. Now, before I go into this, at the May 6th meeting, there were some specific questions that Emmett's going to take on some responses.
Good afternoon, committee. There were a few questions around what research says about using capital funding to increase equitable use for regional parks and trails. And I just am coming back to tell you that I couldn't locate a lot of direct research on this topic, like on other equity grant programs. That said, the council did, as many of you know, organize groundbreaking qualitative research in 2014 on regional park use among communities of color. We actually did a series of 16 focus groups with a diverse array of communities that spoke 23 languages. And the outcomes of these conversations were analyzed using a qualitative approach to identify common themes. And one of the most significant findings in my mind was when exploring barriers to regional parks, the number one perceived barrier to participation is simply awareness that the regional park system even exists. And that was by far the most significant finding. There were other barriers identified also, including time. Sometimes when I hear time, I think it's a lack of priority. Further down the line was safety concerns, concerns that going to the park that they wouldn't feel safe for their family members, safety concerns for their family members. The next one was around transportation options, and finally language barriers. There were additional ones, and we certainly have this research on our website if you're interested. In 2018, when we kicked off the Regional Parks Policy Plan update, we returned to a small set of these same groups to ask them questions about capital projects that they would be interested in. And one of the findings, and it's not surprising to me, is just the importance of restroom facilities in regional parks and trails. Not just their existence, but that they're open when the people are visiting, that they're clean and safe. And this does highlight to me that there is a lot of commonality across people when they go visit. That something as simple as clean and available restrooms are critical to promoting use. There were other articles that we looked into around equity and inclusion, and that certainly is something that we can get into further if people are interested in at another time. So, Libby, I thought we'd jump into the scenarios.
Thank you. So, council members, as a reminder, the goals of the Competitive Equity Grant Program that is before you are that we are going to pilot a grant program to increase the equitable use of our regional park system. So inside of that, we're trying to be competitive. So unlike the other regional parks funding sources, which are either formula allocated in terms of the amount to each implementing agency or first come, first serve, the intent is that this is an explicitly competitive program. We want to be innovative, encourage innovation and creativity in the applications. We want to use the grant program to build the capacity of the 10 regional parks implementing agencies to address issues relating to equitable usage. We have $300,000 in council bonds that can be used for capital purposes. We want to make the selections in 2019, following up on a commitment that was in the update to the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan. And then we want to take the opportunity to evaluate, learn, and refine the Equity Grant Program in 2020 and beyond, because this is an item that is in the council's capital budget in future years as well. So this is not intended as a one-time, but we're looking at this year as the pilot to learn how to structure the program most effectively in future years. So with those goals, I'll move into the various scenarios that we've been talking about. So again, there are 5 scenarios, and the pieces that we're looking at for each of the scenarios are to think about how the scenario reflects your policy value, how it would increase equitable use of our regional parks and regional trails, to think about what strengths and challenges they would have, and to think about how some of the themes that we talked about last time around community engagement, community partnership, geographic distribution, building capacity, how all of these come together moving forward. So with that, scenario 1 is looking at what we're calling a regional equity topic. What this really means is that there would be one equity topic, whether that might be accessibility, whether that might be language, whether that might be better bathroom facilities, whatever it is, would be selected early on. Then there would be an intentional capacity building effort working with all 10 of the implementing agencies. We'd be envisioning outside speakers, workshops in such a way that all 10 would have the opportunity to engage in conversation, build capacity, reflect on what the opportunities are. And then subsequently, we would open up the competitive process in which the 10 implementing agencies would have the opportunity to apply for competitive funding, given what they've learned through the intentional conversation and dialogue that precedes this. So, Madam Chair, I might pause so that you don't forget this, so that you can share your thoughts.
Committee Member Chambliss?
I'm just trying to envision the competitive process after they've, started participating in planning and brainstorming. And I'm hoping that they see this as a regional collaboration so that, it lessens the disappointment if they don't get the source of funds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a negative. It's just, just a thought that kind of popped into my head. Maybe just emphasizing that, this is it's a fun activity for the region, and if we're lucky, we're going to get the money.
Yeah. Right.
Committee Member Wolf, and then Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, before I give my opinion, I wanted to find out, did we ask the opinion of the MPOS members and the implementing agencies? Because it feels a little weird that we're sitting here brainstorming, but when we're basically at the end of what should be the process. And if you guys have more information, I would rather have the more information than give you my opinions without any context.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Wolf, in terms of how the calendaring went, we did talk about all of these with MPOSC, and MPOSC had there was not a consensus coming off of MPOSC. And we walked out of that thinking, I'm not sure which of these MPOSC liked the most. In terms of the calendar, the implementing agencies have seen these because of some attended MPOSC, some are, I'm sure, watching this in live stream right now, but in terms of the calendar, we have not directly received input from the implementing agencies. That will be later this week.
I just want to clarify, we have brought up the equity grant
Yes.
program with them several times. We went through the question burst exercise with them. We went through the prioritization exercise with them. And we will be sharing the scenarios with them on Thursday.
Yes, continue.
Yes,
Thank you.
Councilmember Wolf.
Yeah, without any information, I mean, the implementing agencies are the ones that are going to have to get something out of this and make it happen. So I feel a little bit hobbled by the fact that I have no idea what I mean, nobody's called me. Sometimes if something really egregious is going on, they'll call me up. Did you hear and I haven't gotten any of those sorts of calls, but I really feel like I'm just stabbing in the dark without having any input from the agencies, because we're missing out on the benefit of their experience and expertise. That being said, I find this particular one sort of insulting, because it kind of gives the assumption that we know more about equity than they do, and we have to have a bunch of lectures and trainings and things before they can figure out what they want to do. And I don't think we know more about equity than they do. It just comes across as really belittling of the agencies to do it in that manner. They're very busy people, and they certainly go to, events and trainings all over the country, not just in the region, and saying, well, you've got to all come to these things and listen to us for a while about a topic, and then you can apply for a grant, which you may or may not get. If I was them, I'd be like, I got better things to do. It's only $300,000. Why would I do all of that to apply for something that I may not get?
Committee member Cummings, and then Johnson, Chambliss, and Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So are you anticipating that each of the 10 agencies would apply, or are you thinking that they're going to go through it? Some might not. And is the $300,000 going to one, or might be split up among, or I'm a little confused on that.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Cummings. So this is envisioned as a competitive program. And so with that, we hope that more than one would apply, but ultimately we don't have a clear sense. And that depends in part on what the structure of the program is. One of the dimensions of the fund distribution plan that will be coming forth to you next month is what a minimum grant would be and what a maximum grant would be.
Okay. Thank you. It's helpful.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I too shall be asking questions to figure this out. So the 300,000, do we ever go out and try to leverage grant funding to, get more money, partner our money with other money? It just seems to me like whether it be McKnight or Bush or some of the others, it just seems like there's some core interests, and I don't know if we even can do that or have done that. Just set that aside. And then I think I would agree with some of the things I've heard so far. So my question here, though, as it relates to this, so is it just one equity topic, or we would just ask them to bring forward their equity topic? And it could be different from place to place because they're all over the region and there might be regional differences based on what they're seeing as for need. And the equity topic might be different.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Johnson, in the original conceptualization, it would be one topic across the region. In a later scenario, there is one that is envisioned as having the opportunity for sub-regional specialization.
And Madam Chair, again, just trying to figure out who does what around here. So does the Equity Advisory Committee take a look at this, or did they take a look at this? And
Madam Chair, Councilmember Johnson, yes, we've had 2 previous conversations with the Equity Advisory Committee earlier in the process.
okay. Yes. And then Madam Chair, so it could go, capital funding could be a lot of different things in the park system. But to your point about bathrooms, they're very important. I really, though, want the parks to be building those. It would just tear me apart that, a normal capital expenditure like that would come out of this kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
I understand, though, that there's a tie that's very important for human beings. But I really think, I hope we can get to something, because bathrooms should just be a functional necessity that is in their normal capital plan.
That along with the parking lot and, some of the other basics. Councilmember Chambliss.
Yes, I like this discussion, and I'm learning a little bit more, like the fact that the Equity Advisory Committee saw this, and I'd like to know. I think they said before they supported this. Obviously, I think it's a great opportunity. I know we've had a lot of back and forth about should the council be the first to hear or some of the other committees to hear, and that's probably going to be an ongoing conversation. But I'm pretty excited about this. I think that it gives an opportunity for us to really advance equity, get people involved in the process. I know, when you listed the priorities for people, including the bathroom, and I had the same feeling that you had, Councilmember Johnson, that, I think that's kind of a given. I want nice bathrooms that are accessible, but, nowadays, that's happening anyway in a lot of parks. So I say, let's go for it. I'm very much in support of it. In June, MPOS will have a chance to review it, and then we'll move on to the next stage.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With due deference to Councilmember Wolf, you've been on this body longer than I have. But I actually respectfully disagree. I'm really excited about this program because I come from the world of nonprofit, and this is kind of how sometimes you get grant funding. Sometimes the exclusive philanthropies will have invite only or invite first look at a prospective grant, and then you get invited to it. You hear about it, and then if you like it or you don't, literally you send a letter of interest or you apply. I think sometimes we as an agency have to kind of help nudge along other government units to do more for equity, and I think this would be a good opportunity to do that. If there's a regional park that isn't doing enough to draw in their current constituents, I have no problem saying, why aren't you guys looking into why the current folks aren't here? I think we have to meet the community where they're at, and I think this is a good place to start.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to that point, I was thinking, and I don't want to get, too far downstream here, but again, I'm imagining that through the regional park systems, again, they have their own interests, needs, constituencies, and to Councilmember Lee's point, will there be some kind of a ranking or scoring or understanding of some parks that might have greater disparities or greater need, where funding like this would be more meaningful, whatever that means? Because, it's not a lot of money, but I'm kind of one of those, well, wherever it could have most impact would be very important. And so I don't know what that looks like or what that means, but you could have an agency out there that just comes in with a phenomenal proposal and it's kind of amazing, and yet maybe it would go to a community where the need isn't as great as in others. I don't know. So I just don't, they're not all equal and at the same place of providing services, I would only imagine. So that's one of my values I think I'm expressing.
We have 4 more scenarios, so just,
Yeah.
all right, just want to make sure you knew that. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree with what you're saying, Councilmember Lee, but I don't know that this is the best way to get there. I wasn't, you know, it's the process more than anything else for me. That is an issue here. I also wanted to let people know if anybody wants to take a tour down in my district, I can show you regional parks that have nothing in them because there isn't funding yet. I mean, Dakota County has advance funded lots and lots of capital projects. They just asked for a bunch more future reimbursement. I think they have at least $10 million already on the books for future reimbursement. So they're trying to get stuff there. But like Meesville Ravine Regional Park, I was there last summer, and they have a gravel parking lot and a vault toilet. I mean, it's a giant regional park. It's home to like 2,500 deer. I mean, it's a gorgeous piece of property, but it has nothing there because even with paying for things as fast as the county can, you know, they can't compete with someplace like Minneapolis that has had parks for 100 years, you know. So there are places that, not for no fault of the implementing agency, don't have stuff. One of the ones that are getting reimbursement consideration for the west part of Lake Billsby Regional Park is another one that it's a nice wooded area with right now you can't even get to it. At least Meesville Ravine, the public road drives right, the gravel road that is in that area goes right through the middle of it. So the gravel parking lot, there's one on each side of the road. So you drive right through the park. You don't even know you're in a regional park, but there's a vault toilet if you need to go to the bathroom. I mean, that's the whole park. So we have to consider that there's a wide variety of experiences. It's not all like the chain of lakes, but yeah, I just think this one is a bad idea. Sorry.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Just real quickly, where it talks about scenarios for discussion to inform structure. One of the advised list items was equity issue named and addressed. And I think part of that might be what Councilmember Johnson was talking about is the need factor. So maybe, you know, including that as part of that process would fit. And then I also, just really quickly, the biggest barrier use, I appreciate you adding the components that the council members had questions about in earlier meetings, and the awareness, time, and safety factor. The safety part, sometimes it's cultural experience or exposure to being out in the elements, being out in the woods. You know, I'm right on a trail where I live, and I had a relative. You know, she wanted a fence around her yard because she didn't want to be around the animals, and she was definitely afraid of going on the trail. So early exposure, I think, is very important to reducing some of those barriers.
Okay. We ready to move on to scenario 2? Got it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Scenario 2 would be to use the funding for community engagement for capital projects. In the conversations that we had around the equity grant program over the past few months, a common interest is in using funds to support community engagement. In order to make support of community engagement eligible as a capital expense, we need to tie it to a capital project, so that we cannot fund community engagement as an end in itself around the park, but we do believe that we can use capital funds to support community engagement for an existing capital project. So this scenario suggests that the equity grant program funding would be available to support community engagement.
Questions, comments? Councilmember Wolf.
If it's legal, we would get better bang for our buck out of what we're already doing. I mean, to some degree, the agencies are already doing that with their master planning process, but I don't see any downside to this approach as long as it's legal.
Councilmember Chambliss?
Madam Chair, I really think it's great that there's some set-asides for equity, and then doing that with the capital is fantastic.
Anyone else? Councilmember Johnson, I could see it on your
Yeah.
face.
Oh my. I like this one. This is good. And again, though, community engagement meeting around equity, right? I mean, or just making sure we're still on equity.
Yep.
Because it just says community engagement for capital projects. So equitable use, I see is in there. So, I mean, in my mind's eye, I'm seeing focused around, again, those communities that we want to encourage to embrace the park system. And I would say the only issue, and it's not really an issue that I have because it has to be tied to capital project already in process. I just want to make sure that communities, whoever they are embracing use of capital projects from their point of view, so that it's not majority capital projects all the time, but it's everybody's capital project. So, you know, teaching communities how to use facilities and become more familiar with them, very important. But communities also bring their own uses that majority community might not be accustomed to. So I'm just trying to make sure that we all meet together where we're at, and we all bring together our own experiences into nature. So that's what I kind of am hoping for in this piece of it.
Councilmember Wolf, did I see your hand?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Madam Chair. That's what I was envisioning. Recently, Three Rivers did extensive community engagement in coming up with their master plan for area along the river. I can't remember the name of it. And they totally wrote their master plan based on what people told them that they wanted. That's the kind of engagement that I'm thinking of. Councilmember Munt used to tell stories all the time about that they put in a bunch of canoeing stuff on the river, and then they couldn't figure out why the Native American community didn't want to use it, but they couldn't swim. Nobody thought to ask them before they put the canoes in, do you guys want to use these? They just assumed that this would be a good thing. That's the kind of engagement that I think is what they're talking about here, and that's why I thought it would be good.
Councilmember or Chair Vento, and I just wanted to comment that the project that Councilmember Cummings referenced earlier, the Mississippi Gateway Regional Park, was the one I think that you were referencing, that Three Rivers Park District did extensive outreach, and I know Councilmember Lee and Cummings were both at that tour last week.
Okay.
Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you. Yes, just to reiterate, if money could be used in that way, I think it would be extremely important in advancing the goals that we're all talking about, because they did have unique and interesting and different voices that they relied on to formulate that plan, and it was really exciting to hear. So I think this would be a terrific way for those funds to be targeted.
Anyone else? Okay, moving right along. Scenario 3, public art.
Madam Chair, Councilmember, Scenario 3 is public art. In this, the funding would be made available for public art to be used as a vehicle to welcome underrepresented communities. And because this is a capital funding, we'd be looking at public art that has a lasting impact, so multiple year, hard, very solid public art. But our public artists among us are very accustomed to doing public art that meets the requirements of capital funding. So the idea is that the money would be available for public art.
I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to call on myself. So, I recall at our last conversation about this, there was concern about public art experiences that weren't so positive. And while I understand that, I want to make a pitch for this because throughout Minnesota, we are blessed with some pretty amazing artists. And to the extent that we could combine their creativity, their wisdom, their expertise with our regional parks, I think there's some potential there. Um, I don't know how many artists have been a part of the conversation as yet, but I do think there's potential there to help not only provide an artistic experience, but to also tell some stories through the art. So now that I've called on myself, I'll call on Councilmember Cummings and then Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Public art, of course, is always difficult because it's always controversial and can be challenging. I think it's extremely important. I think it is a language in and of itself that can convey a message or messages and provoke thought and questions and all kinds of things that really are difficult to capture in any other way than through the arts. So I think that the public art scenarios is extremely, obviously it's going to be challenging, but that's what art is. It challenges all of us, and I think that can be a really powerful thing and a very good thing to do. So I think this is a really important scenario to consider.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in this case, then, would the artists be from underrepresented communities, or who are the artists, and how would they interpret something that would welcome underrepresented communities? Not to be answered in the moment, but you could see where you'd hire an artist, and they're going to come up with something that's going to welcome underrepresented communities, and it could be a huge home run or a huge miss. So I think it's authenticity and care and caution in that is important. And again, Madam Chair, so do we have others out in the community, whether they be foundations or, this wonderful arts and culture community that are granting money to work with our park agencies, public-private partnerships to do some of this, or is it just pretty much relying on their own tax dollars or what the Met Council can work with them? Because it would seem to me that you put something out there like this kind of as a challenge in this kind of a community that, man, you might get some private dollars to fund this, or, certainly nonprofit dollars, private converted into nonprofit dollars, because I really think these are all good ideas, but 300,000 doesn't get you very much. So, I like all of this. It'd be just really fantastic if we could, and I know we'll grow this from year to year, or at least we'll continue, but it'd be nice if we could kick off a conversation that's bigger than us in this. I'm sure this is happening everywhere. I just don't know if it's happening intentionally in the park systems.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the light rail stations for Green Line, we spent $250,000 per station on public art. And when I go there, I never see anybody really paying attention to any of the public art. I would like to see something that's going to make a difference on whether or not people are in the park. And the public art, when you have the grand unveiling of it, you'd have, there'd be a little to-do thing, but I don't foresee that as driving underrepresented people into the park. The art lovers might go, oh, that's cool, as they walk past it when they were going to be in the park anyway, but we're looking to get people into the park and feel welcomed. I guess I've never looked at things and gone, gee, I want to go to a park just for one art exhibit. I've been to the sculpture garden, that one's famous, but that's got a lot more than $300,000 worth of art in it.
Anyone else? Scenario number 4, community-led projects.
Madam Chair, council members, in this scenario, the idea is that the implementing agencies would be asked to partner with a community-led effort, and out of the partnership with a community-led effort would emerge essentially a joint process. Because of the council's authorities, our money has to go to the regional parks implementing agencies. So we don't have the opportunity to have grants for entities other than the regional parks implementing agencies. But under this scenario, the idea is that the application would come from the regional parks implementing agency in partnership with a community-led effort.
So as an example, then let's use Phelan. They could request the grant and then work with, say, a district council, or there's an East Side artist group. They could work with them in an effort to produce a capital project. It could be art. It could be.
Madam Chair, in the original conceptualization of this scenario, the partnership would occur prior to the application, that the agency would work with a partner to shape the request. So this is one that would have an impact on the timeline that we laid out, because it takes time to build some of these partnerships.
And is there, since we're focusing on equity, and I apologize for asking all the questions here right now, but would the agencies just be preferably agencies that reflect diversity in our community, or?
Madam Chair, that would certainly be part of the original conceptualization of this.
Okay.
And some of these details would be worked out in both the requirements of the application as well as in the scoring criteria.
I like this one. Councilmember Johnson and then Councilmember Lee.
I like this one too. I think because it's partnership and it's engagement, and they've, are working on coming up with something that's inspiring and fitting the need of their park. And whatever we end up doing, but I could see there's some really good storytelling that could come out of this to help amplify what's going on, which I think will help, again, bring people to see and and have something hopefully with some longevity, because there's some storytelling behind it too. I mean, there's storytelling with all of this, but I don't know, in my life as a city council member, we had some really great successes when we engaged local community groups, the Boy Scouts, places of worship and people that congregated in those places, whatever, seniors, people love to immerse themselves into a project, and especially if it's multi-generational, and again, representing communities that we're trying to, bring into the parks. So I personally really like this one.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like this scenario too. Today I got an email from one of the constituent groups in my neighborhood. Actually, Emmett was CC'd on it, from the East Side of St. Paul District 1 Community Council. And they got wind of this pilot, and so they emailed me this morning wanting to learn more. And so they were excited about this project too. And I think from what they said in the email so far, it sounds like this scenario is more fitting to the interest that they have in mind right now. So.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like this one. When I was on the Lakeville City Council, some people reached out to put some stuff in a city park, and it was for kids who weren't otherwise able to access the regular parks. And they built an accessible ball field. They then added an accessible playground next to it, and now they're fundraising to add an accessible mini golf.
Oh, wow.
And you don't even think about that. How would you get a wheelchair through a mini golf course, But people who feel like they don't have a place, having an opportunity to go to the agency and say, yeah, this is what we'd like to do to have a place, seems like a great way to go about it.
Great. Anything further on scenario 4? Okay, scenario 5, open call. Sounds like last call. Sorry.
Madam Chair, council members, this is the last scenario before you. We have called this open call. This would be the one that the council would request grants. There would be scoring criteria to encourage partnerships, as in the last one. There would be scoring criteria that would ensure that there's community engagement as part of the partnership. There would be scoring to encourage projects that have the greatest impact on disparities in parks usage or meet the greatest need. But in this particular piece, there would be no single focus for the grants. So no, they will be all public art or they will all be community engagement, but there would be an opportunity for a great diversity in projects depending on what the needs of implementing agencies and their communities are.
Councilmember Cummings and then Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you. I like this a lot because it really allows each agency to tailor to whatever they perceive the greatest need to be. I think this opens it up, open call. It's a great idea.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Madam Chair, thank you. So on page 4, it talks about scenarios for discussion to inform. There's the given and the advised. I see the advised saying community engagement, equity issue. If I were to vote on these, my top one would be regional equity collaboration, and then community engagement, and then third would be community-led projects. I really believe that those three can have some of the same components in them. So if you choose the community engagement, it can include the regional equity and the community-led. So I would encourage, whatever is chosen, hopefully there would be those top three, but that they would have all of those aspects in the plans. And, the objective is for us to put forth something that is going to be seen as a competitive proposal that would be accepted. So we also want to look at those factors as well.
Councilmember Johnson.
And again, is it one award of 300,000 or could it be broken down? I wasn't clear on that.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Johnson, this is a competitive program. We have a budget of 300,000. We are planning on bringing forth a minimum grant amount and a maximum grant amount that could be 300,000 or it could be less than 300,000 to encourage multiple grants to multiple agencies.
Yes.
And I'm just going to keep on this a little bit. So is there any way, because I know we're kind of very close and in process here, but is there any way that we would ask the local regional park to do matching money to the grant so that we can expand that $300,000 a little more? I mean, I know as a local agency, when I was in the city world, we were thrilled to be able to, take some money and have it doubled or, get a matching grant to help extend something that maybe we were trying to do anyway, because it's got to be kind of an in-process capital, or maybe add something to it that we just weren't able to do that, in this case would certainly be around equity and access. So I just, if there's any way to include that, that would be important for me because I think it's a pretty great thing. And the more money we can get into it, I think the better. And local skin in the game is sometimes good too.
Mm-hmm. Did either of you want to respond to that at all? Or?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Johnson, I'll simply comment that that's one of the dimensions that we're trying to work with as we put together the fund distribution plan, is to think about whether or not we require matching funds or encourage matching funds.
Bonus points or something.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Lee and then Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like this open call scenario. I think your problem might be that you might have to hold yourself back from making this like the ideas pitch. It might become like TEDx/Shark Tank thing. And I think that would be really amazing to sit in on because I think we'll get a lot of great ideas.
I think we're going to have to see.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, open call would allow any of the other previous things to happen. It doesn't kind of hem people into one particular thing, whatever. It's the most complicated to score and be fair. So it's a lot more work, but on our side, but it allows for the most creativity.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, as we move through the process, whoever is viewing and scoring, I want them hopefully to be representative of community. I think that, you know, values and inclusive and viewpoints and all that's super important. And if we get a lot of these, I think we should figure out a way where it is kind of Shark Tank-like and we find people out there that still want to fund a need, right? Like, okay, we're not done. This is just the beginning. Who else wants to step up and fund this? Because I think we could find people that would want to do it.
Build it and they will come. Or propose to build it and they will come. I was a little nervous, Libby and Emmett, about the fact that maybe we should have brought sleeping bags for tonight's conversation. And this was prior to the start of the meeting because I knew that this was going to be a pretty robust conversation. But in a brief period of time, you all asked some great questions and covered a lot of turf. I am really impressed. So,
Thank you.
well framed and set up. So thank you. You've got a couple more comments I know you want to make.
Madam Chair, council members, just to bring this to the end, we're continuing to have conversations both externally and internally so that by the time we post an agenda for the June MPOSC meeting at the end of this month, we will distill all of these down into a proposal that answers all of these questions and bring forth something to you in June that hopefully captures all of the enthusiasm that you've shared with us tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Awesome.
Excellent. So is there anything else that we need to cover? Well, thank you all for being here. We had a great conversation, and for those of you that stayed till the bitter end, you survived a meeting chaired by moi. Thank you. This job is adjourned.